Have you ever felt like there's more to a person than what they're showing you? Of course you have. The truth is, everyone you meet is leaving this trail of clues about who they really are. You can already sense it. This explainer, it's going to teach you how to read those signs and see what's really going on behind the performance. Now, Nietzsche wasn't being cynical here. Not at all. He understood that the mask we all wear, it's not really about being fake. Think of it more as a survival tool, something we build to get by in the world, to find our place. And here's where it gets really interesting. Most people are completely unaware they're even wearing a mask. They've been playing their part for so long, they actually believe their own performance. And what does that mean? It means their unconscious behaviors, those little cracks in the act, that's where the real truth starts to leak out. Okay, so let's start peeling back the layers. First up, the surface level stuff. The behaviors you can see every day that give us our first real clues. Have you ever noticed how often what people show on the outside actually signals the complete opposite on the inside? That person who is constantly preaching about morality and correcting everyone? Yeah, they might not just be virtuous. They could be using that morality as a cover for a deep-seated need to feel superior. And the one who never shuts up about how confident they are? They're often absolutely terrified of being overlooked. And that brings us to one of Nietzsche's sharpest tools for understanding people, projection. It's technically a defense mechanism, but really, if you know how to read it, it's a confession. So pay really close attention to what someone constantly criticizes in other people. The guy who's always railing against arrogance, chances are he's deeply insecure about his own worth. The person who can't stop pointing out dishonesty in others, well, they're probably hiding a truth they haven't faced in themselves. Their criticisms are literally a map to their own inner battles. And there are other clues hiding in plain sight. When someone goes completely silent on a topic, especially when they should have an opinion, that's often a sign of fear. Or what about a personal story that just doesn't quite add up? The details feel a little off. That shows you someone who's been lying to themselves for a very, very long time. It's all right there. You just have to know where to look. Okay, this brings us to the second layer. It's one thing to see the mask, but it's a whole other game to see it crack. Those little moments, a flash of anger, a nervous laugh, a slip of the tongue, that's where the performance breaks down and the truth finally busts through. So to understand why the mask cracks, we have to ask ourselves a really fundamental question. Because behind almost every weird, irrational, or aggressive thing a person does, you're going to find one thing: fear. Think about it. Why does someone need to dominate every single conversation? They're afraid of being forgotten. Why do they over-explain a super simple point? They're afraid of being misunderstood or, worse, seen as a failure. So stop focusing on what people say they want and start looking at what they're absolutely terrified of losing. Oh, you've heard this one a million times, right? I don't care what anyone thinks. It sounds so strong, so independent. But Nietzsche saw it as a total dead giveaway. Because the person who has to keep insisting they don't care what anyone thinks almost certainly cares, and they care a lot. Exaggeration is a tell. It's like the ego is shouting to try and drown out a tiny whisper of insecurity. Any extreme statement in any direction usually points to an inner imbalance, not strength. And you see this pattern everywhere. The person who has to micromanage every little detail isn't strong. They're terrified that if they let go for even a second, their own inner chaos will just take over. And the person whose whole life is just one constant, loud performance, it's often a sign of a deep inner emptiness they're desperately trying to fill with noise and attention. So now we get to the final layer. Because behind every mask and behind every fear, there's usually a wound. And this is where we learn to see the deep story that drives everything a person does. This insight, honestly, it changes everything. You think you're having a rational debate with someone, but you're not. You're in a conversation with their old pain, their entire worldview, their strongest opinions. A lot of the time, they're just these really sophisticated defenses built around something that broke them a long, long time ago.
So try to reframe your whole approach. Stop asking, why do they believe that? And start asking yourself, what are they afraid of feeling again? And suddenly, their arguments don't feel like attacks anymore. They feel like shields. And when you see that, you stop just reacting and you can start to actually understand.
You see, our behavior is really just our biography in motion.
Take a child who was always ignored. They develop this core fear of being invisible. And that child grows up to be an adult who demands constant attention, not because they're some kind of egomaniac, but because a part of them is still that little kid just trying to heal that original wound.
And we are constantly reenacting the roles we were forced to play as kids. A person whose feelings were punished grows into an adult who's cold and detached. Someone who had to perform to get any love just keeps on performing for affection their entire life. They think they're making choices, but really, they're just repeating the past.
So the big takeaway here is that a person's recurring patterns, they're like an unspoken confession. The person who always ghosts people when things get serious is telling you they're afraid of getting close. The one who overworks to avoid being still is confessing their fear of what's waiting for them in the silence. Okay, so what is the point of all this? Is it to win arguments, to gain power over people? No, it's about a massive shift in how you see everything. Because once you see the fear behind the bully or you see the scared little kid behind the critic, you can't unsee it. You stop taking their behavior so personally. You stop judging. This knowledge isn't a weapon, it's a tool. It's a tool that lets you offer a little bit of grace, both to other people and, just as importantly, to yourself. And what you'll find is that ultimately, this whole journey, it isn't even really about them. The goal itself changes. You might start out trying to read other people, but you end up reading your own patterns, your own masks, and your own fears. And that is the final truth. Your perception of the world around you is really just a mirror. The things you absolutely can't stand in other people, they're often a part of yourself you haven't made peace with. And the things you deeply admire in them, that's a part of yourself that's just longing to be set free. So I'll leave you with a question. After seeing how all these patterns play out, after learning to read the masks and the wounds in other people, what's the one pattern that you finally, truly recognized in your own life? Because that's where the real work begins.